egalitarian structure, which is more socialistic in sharing. Now here we have another picture of the corpus callosum, and right in the center of the corpus callosum there is this gland called the pineal gland that some people think, when activated, produces hormones that can actually provide a gateway or another eye, a third eye, so to speak, into the extramundane world. Actually produces certain hormones like serotonin and what have you that can actually activate certain centers in the brain that are outside the intellectual capacities and go in more to the intuitive gateways. And there you see again a picture of the pineal gland right at the center of the balancing center that provides this balance of the two hemispheres of the brain. Now, this is a picture of Carl Gustav Jung. He was the father of analytical psychology, and he understood this bifurcation of the soul and of the mind through one center being the conscious mind, the other center being the unconscious or superconscious, and how the conscious mind, or the intellectual self, the ego, so to speak, had actually repressed the true self, or the intuitive self, which provided these gateways outside the circles of time and into the extramundane world. And he garnered a lot of this. Here he is again, as an older man. Again and again in his office. He garnered a lot of this on a trip he made in 1925 to Taos Pueblo. And he learned a lot about Native American shamanism at that time. He visited this Pueblo, and here's another picture of the Pueblo, 1925. And he visited some of the Taos Pueblo elders. There's a photo of the Pueblo at the time. There's a photo of it today. And one of the elders in particular that he visited and became acquainted with and actually held a written communication with throughout a large part of his life was a man named Antonio Mirabel, otherwise known as Mountain Lake. And when he first met Mountain Lake, he asked him what he thought of white men as opposed to red men. He said, they are a very restless and mad people. And he says, well, why would you say that they are mad? And he says, because they do not perceive things from their heart, but from their head. And this made a profound effect upon Jung, which he went back and he started reinvesting a lot of these shamanic principles in his psychological viewpoints. And he came to the conclusion that there was indeed another world that you could access. One way was through dreams. And this other world was this vast world of the unconscious that had to a large extent been repressed at some point in time. And this caused an imbalance, just like there is now an imbalance. We go back in the earth, because the Western Hemisphere philosophies of intuition and the feminine principle of egalitarianism has been repressed by this very aggressive, hierarchical, male-dominated structure from the Eastern Hemisphere, principally from Western Europe. And at the same time, the intuitive centers of the soul and the brain have overcome and repressed or have been repressed by the analytical and intellectual thought processes and centers of the left brain. So it mirrors and mimes what's going on the planet with what's going on in the internal self. There's a solution to this, of course, but that would require allowing for the feminine aspect, the egalitarian and nurturing aspect, to be manifest again. and to appreciate that the Western Hemisphere philosophies have an equal part to play, and the intuition and the extramundane world and these gateways have an important and equal part to play with those of the intellect of the Eastern Hemisphere. I'm not saying that the one is better than the other. I'm saying they should be equally balanced, and without maintaining that balance, you're headed for a destructive scenario, which is what we kind of have today, because consumerism, the ego, is just taking control and it's out of control. This is one thing at the end of Jung's life that he was very concerned about. In 1962, he made a lot of statements that he was really concerned about the psychological imbalance in man and how it could actually override the earth and just devastate it because of this overriding ego structure that where if it gets out of control, it just consumes everything. And that's really what we have today. And that's what sort of this imbalance is causing all these torturous effects on the earth with the animals, with domestic livestock, with torturing and killing animals, with men killing their wives and chopping their heads off, and women drowning their children. And all. It's becoming more and more profuse as we progress because the ego structure is becoming more and more out of control. And it's like a vicious cycle. The more out of control it is, the more trauma people tend to feel, and the more the ego comes forth as an attempt at a defense. And as the ego comes forth more, then it can be manipulated by outside forces in a more easily, and it causes more devastation, which causes more trauma, which causes more ego effect and more control again. So, in summation, this is really what needs to be done. Is there needs to be a balance found by forming conservancies of indigenous life to reawaken the feminine goddess principle, which has been repressed for 500 years in the Western Hemisphere and probably 5,000 years in general on the earth. It's been a slow repression, and a repression internally of the conscious mind and the ego structure over the subconscious mind and the extramundane world. Chukmadishanishki, Nitak Valia, Ninaya Hosh, Ishnawashki.